Today, I'm going to show you how to do the perfect base install for Windows 11. This is the way that I typically set up new computers. Stay tuned. So, I've shown you how to install Windows 11 on unsupported hardware. I've shown you how to debloat Windows 11. I've even shown you how to go through and set up Windows 11 to be kind of as private as possible. But today, I'm going to show you my method of setting up Windows 11 on new computers. This will also work on computers that you're doing a fresh install on that are even on unsupported hardware. Well, you could do it either way. This is simply a base install of Windows 11 that you can start from, and then from that point, do whatever you want. But first, I gotta pay some bills. So check out today's sponsor. Are you still running Windows 11 unactivated because the license just costs too much? Then you should check out today's sponsor, VIP-SCDKey, where you can get a valid Windows 11 license for around $20. Stop dealing with that stupid watermark and actually be able to change your desktop background with a valid license for Windows 11. Just go to the link in the description below and pick up a valid Windows 11 license key. During checkout, use the code CyberCPU for a 25% discount. Once you have your key, go to your activation settings in Windows 11 and click the link that says Change Product Key. Enter the product key you just purchased and hit Activate. Now you don't have to deal with that stupid watermark. And check out the description for deals on not just Windows, but Office too. Now, on with the video. So you may say, what is the purpose of this video? If you're just installing Windows 11, then can't we just install Windows 11 and be done with it? Well, yeah, you can, but I'm going to show you how I install Windows 11 to save myself a little bit of time before debloating and tweaking the install. This install that I'm showing you how to do isn't going to be fully debloated, and it's not going to have all the privacy settings changed to where I think they really should be. But it's going to be a slimmed down version of Windows 11 that shouldn't have any compatibility issues like fully debloated installs of Windows 11 sometimes have, and can be done with the official Microsoft ISO. In fact, this entire guide can be followed by only using one single program that isn't from Microsoft. So let's go ahead and jump on the system and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so here we are in Windows 11, but we're going to be installing Windows 11 on a virtual machine. But before we do that, we need to actually have the installer for Windows 11. So to do that, the first thing that we need to do is download the ISO from Microsoft. So from this webpage, and I'll have a link to this down in the description below, we're going to scroll down to the very bottom where it says Download Windows 11 Disk Image. And for Select Download, there's really only one selection. It's Windows 11. And then push the download button. It's going to go through and validate your request here. It's going to take a second to do this, but once it does, you're going to select your language. I'm going to pick English United States. Hit confirm. I'm going to go through the validation process again. And then from that point, you're just going to push this button right here where it says 64-bit download. And it's just going to take a minute for this to download. But luckily, I already have this downloaded, so we can move on to the next thing. So for that, we're going to go over to Rufus. And this is going to allow you to create a USB thumb drive out of that ISO that we just created. And it also has some other features too. I've used this in the past, so you're probably familiar with it. But if you're not, this can also help you to install Windows 11 on unsupported hardware. But we're going to get into that in a minute. I typically recommend using the portable version, but you can install it if you want, but I'm going to download the portable version in this video right here. And it should download pretty quick. And then once it's done, we can go ahead and close our browser right here and open up our downloads folder where everything we just downloaded should be. And then once we get into here, we're going to go ahead and launch Rufus itself. Go ahead and hit yes to the user account control. And then the first thing it's going to ask you when it launches is, do you want to allow Rufus to check for online updates? Go ahead and hit yes to this right here. And then for Rufus, you're obviously going to need a USB drive. Now make sure you pick a USB drive that doesn't have important data on it because it's all going to be destroyed once you create your USB install for Windows 11. Because Rufus will erase the USB drive and then put all the install files onto it. Let me show you how to do it. Okay, so we're just gonna go ahead and plug our USB drive in, and it should populate in the top right here once it detects it. And then from here, just double check, make sure this is the drive that you wanna use, and then go ahead and push select to select your image itself. We're gonna go ahead and pick this one right here and hit open. You can leave all these settings default if you're installing this onto a modern system. However, if you're installing this onto an older computer that uses an MBR file system, then you can change this to MBR. However, then it won't boot from UEFI. So for that, what you can do is actually hit the buttons Alt-E, and that turns it into a dual UEFI BIOS mode, and it'll allow you to create a USB that will boot from both UEFI and MBR. So you can go either way. However, if you don't need MBR, then I would hit Alt-E to turn that off and just make it straight GPT. And then from there, once you're ready, go ahead and push the start button, and this will bring up the Windows user experience options within Rufus. And this will allow you to change a lot of the ways that you install Windows 11. Like for one, it'll allow you to bypass the hardware requirements as well as the Microsoft account requirements. It'll also allow you to create a local user account with a username already. You can also set the regional options as the same as the values for this user that's for the system you're actually creating the USB on. You can also disable data collection, and you can disable BitLocker automatic device encryption. Now this is one that I would definitely recommend doing. The other ones are completely up to you if you want to do that or not. However, once you choose which options you want, go ahead and hit OK. And at this point, go ahead and hit OK again, and it should go ahead and create the USB drive for you. Now it's going to take a while to create this, so go ahead and let it finish up, and we can move on to the next step. Okay, now that it's done, we can go ahead and close this, and then you can take this USB drive, stick it into whatever computer that you want to install Windows 11 on, and then we can move on to the next step. However, we're not going to be using the USB drive to install Windows 11. What we're going to be doing is installing it into a virtual machine just to make it a little easier for me to make a video on it. However, the steps should be exactly the same. So let me go ahead and jump on the computer, and we can move on from there. Okay, like I said, we're going to go ahead and close this, and we're going to fire up a virtual machine right here. I already have all of this configured and ready to go, and it's going to be using the same ISO that we just used to create the USB drive. So all I'm going to do is go ahead and start this right here, and it's going to take a second right here for it to fire up. And then once it does, I got to go ahead and hit any key to continue. And like always, it's going to take a second for the installer to actually start. So I'm going to skip ahead until the setup starts, and we can move on from there. Okay, so the first change that we're going to make right here, and this is kind of an old trick, but it's one that works really well. But if you change your time and currency format from English United States or whatever country you happen to be in to English World, then you can go ahead and hit next. What it will do is it will install a lot less junk within Windows. Once we get Windows fired up, you'll see what I'm talking about. So we're going to keep the same keyboard method, hit next. We're going to install Windows 11. We're going to have to agree to everything, hit next. I'm going to say I don't have a product key. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick Windows 11 Pro. However, you choose whichever version of Windows that you have a key for or a license for, or whatever version of Windows you plan to buy a license for, and then go ahead and hit next. Hit accept the user agreement. And then at this point, we're going to create a partition. We're just going to hit create partition there and hit apply. And this will create the default partitions for Windows. Now you can just highlight the unallocated space and hit next. However, I like creating the partitions. I don't know why, but every time I go through and show you guys how I do this, I always get people commenting on why I shouldn't do it that way, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and format the primary partition, which is going to be the larger partition of the ones that are automatically created. Then select that and hit next. And the last thing to do before we get to the next step is just disconnect the Ethernet cable. This will be important later on in the video. And at this point, it's going to go ahead and install Windows. So it's going to take a minute for setup to do its thing. So I'm going to go ahead and jump a little ahead, and I'll meet you back in Windows once we get to the next step. Okay, so this right here, you're going to get this error right here, and this is a side effect of selecting world as your currency earlier. Just go ahead and hit skip. It's not going to affect your setup at all. And then at this point, go ahead and select all of your normal settings the way that you want them. I'm going to go ahead and leave that default. I'm going to skip the keyboard layouts. And at this point, it's going to give you an error saying that you don't have any network. And of course you don't, because you disconnected the Ethernet cable like I told you earlier. We're not going to do what Microsoft wants and connect it. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to hit Shift F10, and this will open up a CMD window. And then from here, all I want you to do is go ahead and type in start space ms-cxh : and then local only. And by doing this, what it does is it skips the entire Microsoft account creation process. So I'm going to go ahead and write Rich for the user account. You can enter a password if you want. I'm not going to here. And then go ahead and hit next. And at this point, it should finish setting up Windows. And once you do that, you can go ahead and reconnect your network cable at this point. And then go ahead and select your privacy settings. I typically say no to all of these right here, and then click accept. And at this point, it should be in Windows. So now that we have Windows set up, it's time to go through and tweak the install a little bit. This is the point where you're going to need that one third-party application I spoke about before. And I'll show you what that is once we jump back on the computer. Okay, so here we are in Windows 11. Now I went ahead and installed the VirtualBox add-ons off camera because you're not gonna have to repeat that step, but I did that so I could maximize my window here and it'll stretch out to the whole window just to make it easier to see while we're filming. So the first thing that we're gonna wanna do, obviously, is I'm not a big fan of the Edge browser, so I like to install an alternative browser. So to do that, just go ahead and hit your start button and type CMD. And go ahead and run CMD as an administrator. Go ahead and hit yes to the user account control. And then at this point, you're gonna type in, depending on what browser you want to install, I'm gonna type in winget install --ID, then the equal signs, and then there's a couple different choices. I'm gonna install Brave first, and then I'll install Chrome as well, so you can see how to do them both. So just type in brave.brave, and then hit enter, and it'll go ahead and find Brave and install it for you. And it might take a second. You're gonna have to hit yes to agree to the user agreements. And then, oh, I screwed up. Okay, so here's something that's kind of important right here. So in order to use winget, you have to change the setting for your currency that you changed before, because currently right now we have it set up for world in order to not get all the bloat. Because if you hit on the start menu, you can see we don't have anywhere near the bloat that Windows 11 typically comes with, and that's because we set our original setting to world during setup, but now we have to set that back. So to do that, open up settings, go into time and language, and then from time and language, you want to go into language and region. And then from here, you can see the country and region right here where it says world. And we're going to go ahead and set this back to the United States. Then we can go ahead and close settings. I'm going to hit the up arrow to run the same command that I used before. And at this point, it should go ahead and download and install Brave. Now, it's going to take a second to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to where it's done. And then I'll show you how to do Chrome. Okay, so as you can see, we have the Brave browser installed. So to do Chrome, it's a very similar, but it's a little bit different. You type winget space install, then --ID equals, and then for this one right here, for Brave, it's not case sensitive. You just type brave.brave and it's fine. However, with Chrome, you have to type Google with it capitalized, at the first letter, G capitalized, then .chrome, and the C in Chrome has to be capitalized. If you don't do the capitalization in Google and Chrome, it won't install. So go ahead and hit enter, and it'll go through the process of installing Chrome. So what I'm doing right here is I'm showing you that it's possible to install a browser without opening Edge. Because the joke used to be the only purpose for Internet Explorer, or in this case Edge, is to have something to download Chrome with once you install Windows. However, you don't even need it for that at this point. So after we get our browser installed, I'm going to show you how to remove it. So let's get back on the system and I'll show you how. So now that we have that installed, we can also use winget to update all of our applications as well. And to do that, you just type winget space upgrade space --all, then space --include -unknown. And then hit enter, and it'll go through and it'll look for all the applications that you have installed on the system and upgrade them. So as you can see, we're upgrading our app installer, our Microsoft Virtual C++, and our Windows Terminal application. And then what winget will do is it'll go through and it'll upgrade all the applications that it has the ability to upgrade. So it's almost done here. Once it finishes up, we'll move on to the next step. So now that those are upgraded, we can go ahead and close our command prompt. And at this point, we're gonna have to open up a browser. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up Chrome here. And then from here, we're gonna download the one third-party app that we need in order to finish this setup. So I'm gonna hit don't sign in. I'm gonna hit, you can go ahead and hit set as default. I'm gonna skip that for now because it's not gonna really matter on this system. And then from here, I'm gonna have you download the Revo uninstaller. And then from here, go ahead and click here. I'll go ahead and leave a link for this down in the description below. This is a great utility to have. Go ahead and click on downloads. And then from here, we're gonna use the Revo free installer. However, I'm not gonna use the installable version. I wanna use the portable one. So I'm gonna go down here and download the free portable version. It's gonna take a second to download, but once it does, we can go ahead and open it up here. And we can close Chrome at this point. And then I'm gonna extract this. And then once it extracts, it should just take a second, we can go ahead and launch the program just like that. You're gonna have to hit yes to user account control in order to fire it up. And once it started up, as you can see, we only have a few programs installed, but the one of interest right now is Microsoft Edge, and we want to get rid of that completely. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight it and hit uninstall. And then from here, it's going to give you a warning saying that this may cause features not to work properly in Windows. And this is true. It will, in fact, cause things not to work in Windows. Most of the things that it's going to cause not to work are stuff like Copilot, things that we don't want to work in the first place. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. We're going to hit continue. And we're gonna go ahead and we can go ahead and leave it at moderate and hit scan. And it's gonna go through and it's gonna scan for all the different files that are associated with Microsoft Edge. And then the first thing is gonna be registry entries. So we're gonna go ahead and hit select all and then hit delete. And then next is going to be the files associated with the program itself. So we're going to hit select all for those and hit delete as well. Hit yes, and it should delete all the files associated with Microsoft Edge. It's going to take a second to do this, so we're going to sit back and let it finish, and then we'll move on. And there we go, we're going to go ahead and hit OK. Now, it may not have been able to delete every single file, and all the ones that are still showing on the screen are ones that it was unable to delete currently. What it'll do is it'll go ahead and delete those the next time Windows restarts. We're going to go ahead and hit finish, and at that point, Edge should be gone. Now, at this point, you could go through and uninstall anything else you want. I typically uninstall OneDrive, so we're going to go ahead and hit OK to that. And then it's going to go ahead and run the regular basic uninstaller, and at that point, we can go ahead and scan if there's any files left over. And typically, it'll find something. We're going to go ahead and select all the registry entries, hit delete for those. And then for all the files, we're going to hit select all and then hit delete again. And it's going to go ahead and delete those. And then the same thing, it's going to delete the remaining files during the next system reboot. So we're going to go ahead and hit finish. And at that point, we can go ahead and close our Revo uninstaller. Now, we can go ahead and close these Explorer windows that we have open. And then the next step is to go through your all apps and just get rid of everything you don't want. Like for instance, I don't want Copilot. However, one thing that I wanted to point out is because we uninstalled Edge, if we try to click Copilot, it won't actually do anything because Copilot is a web app that's reliant on Microsoft Edge in order to work. So if you remove Microsoft Edge, you don't have to worry about Copilot anymore because it won't do anything. So we're going to go ahead and click uninstall since it's worthless at this point anyway. And then we're going to go through the list and we're just going to uninstall all the stuff that we don't want. Like Microsoft 365, I typically uninstall that. Microsoft News, I typically uninstall that as well. Clipchamp, I usually uninstall that one also. And then just kind of go through, and this is going to be subjective. It's going to be whatever you don't want to have on the system. So just go ahead and go through and get rid of any programs that you don't want to have on your system. And then once you're done, you can go ahead and close the start menu. And then at this point, we can go through and we can start getting rid of apps that are on our taskbar. Now, you might notice that we still have Microsoft Edge on the taskbar, but if you click on it, you'll see that the shortcut doesn't go to anything because we uninstalled it, so we can delete the shortcut. And I usually always go ahead and unpin Outlook as well as the Microsoft Store. In fact, typically I uninstall Outlook also. You can also right-click on the Start menu, click on Taskbar Settings, and you can disable all the different task view and widgets typically, and then I'll usually hide the search box as well in order to finish up the look I'm going for in Windows. So at this point, you should have a base install of Windows 11. Like I said before, it's not fully debloated, and there are lots of privacy related settings that you can still change that would make it even better than it already is. Essentially, what you're left with here at this point is a base install that is as compatible as possible. This is the way that I set up new systems for my customers. Now, the reason why I don't fully debloat Windows OSs is because certain application packages sometimes have dependencies within that bloatware in order to function properly. And to be honest with you, I just don't want the support calls. Sometimes it's just unavoidable. You have problems with debloated copies of Windows. It's just the way it is. What I showed you here, though, should be a good balance between reliability and compatibility without completely debloating. However, there are many privacy-related settings that you could change within Windows that could make this install even better than it already is. And if you'd like to do that, then check out this video here. This is actually a great video if you'd like to make Windows more private from the prying eyes of big tech. But with that said, you guys have a great day.